Welcome everybody. Dr. Randall Wolf here, coming to you live from DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center here in Houston, Texas. It is the first Tuesday of the month and time for CV Live covering atrial fibrillation. My guest today will be Mr. Joseph O'Brien. He is a AFib patient. He was kind enough to volunteer his time. I'm here in the studio in Houston, Texas. Mr. O'Brien is in Pennsylvania near Scranton, but he'll be with us. It'll seem like he's right here in the studio because of our wonderful producers and how they put things together. As you know, we take this time to not only talk about AFib, but also answer any of your questions. So if you're listening live and you have a question, there are two ways to get your question directly in front of us. You'll see it on the screen there. If you're on your phone, the text instructions are there. You go 37607, 37607, and text DeBakey, and then text in your message. Or if you're on a computer, go to pollev.com, enter DeBakey, and then respond to the activity. And I will say it's better if you get your questions in at the first part of the hour. Much better chance that we'll get to your question and be able to answer your question. So again, if you're on your phone, 37607, text DeBakey. If you're on your computer, pollev.com, and enter DeBakey. And we'll take all your questions, any question about AFib, or if you have another burning question, we'll try to answer it. From time to time, we do what some people call testimonials, but a patient's story, and patient stories are very important because they bring up a lot of points that may help you in the audience. So as Mr. O'Brien tells his story, I may interject from time to time to make a point or to expand on one of the issues that he's discussing with you. I'll call you Joe if that's all right. Mr. O'Brien was here about 10 months ago in person and had the Wolf procedure. So you're about 10 months out, is that right? Around
yes.
10? What I'd like to do is turn it over to you, Joe, and give us a little bit about your story. And maybe it's best just to start at the beginning. How did you find out that you had AFib?
I think it is very useful when you have guests on your podcast to kind of tell their journey, how they got here, because there may be someone that's listening and they may relate to some of the things I'm about to say. And the reason I'm here is I hope I can encourage and help someone that is listening to this podcast, because at the time we're done, you're probably going to want to call Dr. Wolf for an appointment, because he's the only guy that can do this. So on March 15th, 2014, my wife and I went to a music concert with some friends, and it was in a large gymnasium attached to a school. Just a typical traditional high ceilings, metal walls, wood floors, and there were quite I think like 6 or 7 different groups that were going to perform. And so when we went in, when the concert was starting, I asked that we could sit as far away from the speakers as possible, because I have very sensitive hearing, and sometimes the loud music hurts my ears. So we all sat in the very back, and we were just sitting on those like plastic chairs with the metal legs, like typical school chairs. So when the concert started, the first fellow that performed was just a solo act, acoustic guitar, very easy listening, and that was very nice. He did 1 or 2 songs. Then the next group was a more traditional, I guess like a rock band, I guess. They had like, rhythm guitar and, lead guitar, bass player and a drummer. And as soon as they hit the first chord of the song that they started, there was some type of, I don't know how, it was like a lightning bolt. It came out of that speaker, it crossed that wooden floor, it went up the right front leg, that metal leg on the chair I was sitting, and it hit my heart almost like a weapon. My whole body started tingling. I literally had to grasp my chest and hold it and lean over. It was like a weapon, like an acoustical, an electrical frequency or something. And as soon as the music stopped, it reversed. I was fine. And I'm just
I'll tell you what, that's a heck of a song.
Well, I have never experienced. It was like a weapon.
Yeah.
So as soon as they stopped the song, I was fine. And as soon as they started the second song, the identical thing happened. I literally had to run out of the room. It hurt my heart. Even when I went outside into the hallway, I could still feel it a little bit. I actually had to exit the building completely. And even on the concrete walk outside, I could still feel like a vibration. So I finally ran out on the lawn next to a tree, and I started feeling a little better. And I was out there, until intermission. So I went in during intermission, and one of my friends was getting a hot dog or something at one of the vendors, and I said, "Man," that music, that second group was like really hard on me. And he said my insides feel like mush. So it wasn't just me that felt something. He didn't, get AFib from that. But that night when I went home, I was laying in bed, and I felt like there were some like butterflies in my heart, like flapping their wings trying to escape. And the first thing I thought, I never heard of AFib or anything. The first thing went through my mind is, this is serious. This is not going to go away. This is bad, whatever this is. And so, for the next week or two, I wasn't feeling the greatest, but I could still go to work and, get through the day. But about a month later, I was out playing golf with some friends, and all of a sudden my heart just started racing. And the first thing I thought is, I'm going to have a heart attack and die. So I jumped in my car as quick as I could. I went to the quickest, the first emergency room I could find. And they hooked me up, to some drug to calm my heart down. And the attending physician came out and said, "Hey, you have AFib." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He tried to tell me what it is. I had never heard of it before. He said, "Well, you got to go to a cardiologist." So that started the journey. And the cardiologist said, "Well, we don't really know what causes this. And we have ways to treat it." And I said, "Well, can you cure it?" And he was very vague. He said, "Well, we're going to start you off with, some drugs. And if you have gone through this, you would know they start you with a statin drug. Metoprolol is, usually at the top of the list, for a lot of people. But they don't tell you statins over time, they poison the liver, they lower the cholesterol in your body. It has some, pretty bad side effects. And then they give you something, for the rhythm of your heart, some kind of antiarrhythmia. I was on Flecainide. There are other, brands I'm sure out there. And then, of course, our friend, the blood thinner, Mr. Eliquist or something similar. When I started taking the statin drugs and the antiarrhythmia drugs and the blood thinner drugs, I almost started feeling worse than I was from the AFib. A couple weeks after I started taking...
Let me interject right there, because that's an important point you just touched on, Joe. After doing this for many years, patients would come back and say, "I feel better now than I did 10 years ago." And I thought, okay, you're in rhythm, but better than you felt 10 years ago. And over time, I realized it wasn't just the AFib, getting over the AFib, it was getting rid of the drugs. It was almost 50-50. So when they stopped the drugs that slow down the heart, like beta blockers or calcium channel blockers, they had a lot more energy. And when they stopped the antiarrhythmics, they felt better. So what happens, I think, is appropriately patients are started on a low dose of beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, antiarrhythmic, and when it's not effective, the first thing to do is double the dose.
Yes.
And then if that doesn't work, double the dose again. So you get to the point where by noontime, you're pooped out. You're ready to get on the couch. So it seemed to me that, and maybe you're that way, and a lot of people, half of it was getting out of AFib, and the other half was getting off some of the toxic drugs.
Absolutely. Within probably 2 weeks of taking Eliquis, some of my toes started turning black and blue. And the first thing I thought of, hey, there's something going on inside the body. If that's the outward manifestation, I don't care if my doctor, like, he's almost frightening me. If you don't take, Eliquis or blood thinner, you're going to have a stroke or heart attack. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to take my chances. I'm not taking this stuff anymore. And just what you said, they said, okay, well, let's keep upping the dose as it, was less effective. And I'm sure I've met some people with AFib that are almost asymptomatic. They don't even know they have it. But I was on the other end of the spectrum. I felt sick every single day. From when I would wake up to when I would go to sleep, I was fatigued. I had no energy. I would have, I call them horseshoe headaches. They seem to, the front and side of my head, I would get them from time to time. I just felt horrible. And then I couldn't sleep at night because I like to sleep on my side. But when I sleep on my side, it kind of compresses the rib cage, and the heart is not beating properly in the first place. I'd usually have a headache within 10 seconds. So now I've got to lay on my back and try and go to sleep, which is almost impossible. So this went on for 9 years. So I felt sick every single day for 10 years. By the time I got to CU, it took me a year to get into CU. So for a decade of my life, I was sick every single day, 24/7.
Well,
that's how bad the AFib hit me.
Yeah, well, that's another important point. We did a study years ago, and we had people who had AFib keep a diary. And they were to write in their diary when they thought they were out of rhythm. And we were monitoring them 24/7 for 14 days. And patients weren't very good. Some of them weren't very good at knowing when they were in and out of rhythm, and other people were spot on. They knew the beat they went out of rhythm and the beat they went back in rhythm. So what I've learned from this is that about half the people are almost incapacitated when they go out of rhythm. They just don't feel good, and then the other half patients, they're not really sure when they're in rhythm and when they're out of rhythm. So I guess we're all wired a little differently. So it's kind of 50-50. You're in the 50% that it really affected you.
Oh, I could tell immediately. Like I said, when the drugs started becoming less and less effective, I could snap my finger. I knew exactly when I went to AFib. Yeah. And if I'd get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, my heart's racing, I'd eat some more drugs. Sometimes it would knock it down, sometimes not. But the bottom line is, my cardiologist could not give me really any encouraging news other than they said, okay, well, let's try a cardioversion, the paddles on the heart. I said, sure, let's try that. So they did it the first time, and I was probably in rhythm for like a month or so. Then it went back out, and then they did it a second time, maybe like a year later. That only lasted for about a week. So that didn't work anymore. And then they said, well, let's do the catheter ablation. And I said, well, is that going to cure it? And they said, well, everybody has, different experiences. So I looked it up online. I looked at YouTube. I started reading books. And the catheter ablation frightened me more than the AFib condition that I had. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm getting that done. I figure if I'm going to have a stroke, I'll have a stroke, but I'm not letting them do that.
Well, let me interject again there. I'd like to show on the screen again from the producers what we got how to get a hold of us during this hour. If you're on your phone, go to 37607, text DeBakey. If you're on your computer, go to polllev.com, POLLEV.com, enter DeBakey. And the first question is for you, Joe, and it states, when your episode happened, was it coincidence, or do you think something really connected to you from the sound system?
Oh, when I initially got the condition?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, absolutely. I actually found an article I was reading years ago. Adolf Hitler had in his War Department, they actually had acoustical warfare. They used to play around with different frequencies, and they said when Hitler would come out to give a speech, they actually tuned the instruments differently, and it actually excited the crowd. It actually changed them. So there's no doubt in my mind that some people can be affected by whether it's the EMF. We live in the electrical magnetic field, the Gauss field, frequencies. I think there's a lot of things that could actually trigger it that you generally won't hear spoken about. That's just my personal opinion.
It wasn't Iron Butterfly that was playing, was it?
No, I can't remember the song. I'm telling you, I'll never forget that day the rest of my life. I couldn't see it, but I could almost see it. That thing came out of that speaker across the floor.
Here's another question for you, Joe. If you have AFib, is going to a concert something to be concerned about? Well, this is a little bit of a new one on me. You say yes, I guess, but I guess maybe it depends on what you're going to hear too. I don't know.
Well, I think I'm positive that's what triggered it in me. But when I go to church on Sunday, they have a worship band, and the music is, it's not super loud, but it's loud enough. No, I don't shy away from music anymore, like I would there. But I'd be very careful. I probably would not go to a concert with like huge speakers and really loud. I would not do that anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but that's just me.
There's a possibility that it's also related to stress in a concert venue, and maybe when you hear something you don't like, maybe that increases your stress. I don't know, but it's an interesting point. I never heard that before, but I'm sure we'll get opinions on it as we go along. Let me take one more question. Yes, sir?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to mention it is just because maybe there's someone else out there that had something similar, and people said oh, you're crazy or whatever. It's no, I was there. It happened. I'm absolutely 100% positive. That's what triggered it. That event, that frequency, whatever it was. That's when it started.
Maybe we just need to avoid that particular band.
I won't say the name of it in case there's someone out there that knows about it. So I remember.
Let me take one more question, then we got room for some more questions. 37607 on your phone. Text DeBakey. Or go, if you're on your computer, POLLEV.com and enter DeBakey. The question is, would having a patent foramen ovale disqualify me from the Wolf procedure? Well, the short answer is no, it doesn't at all. And give all of us a little background on this. A patent foramen ovale is a hole between the upper two chambers of the heart, the right atrium and the left atrium. And that is normally open before you're born. But after you're born, it normally closes because you start to use your lungs and you oxygenate the blood, and that hole closes. It does not close in all people. It's a very common thing to have a patent foramen ovale, which means just the hole is still open. It doesn't qualify from the Wolf procedure. Now, in addition, we see a lot of foramen ovales, but they're really a hole that was created from doing the catheter ablation. And generally, if a patient's had multiple catheter ablations, there will be a hole left over between the right and left atrium. That's where the catheter went up the groin, into the heart, up into the right atrium, and then a hole was poked from the right atrium to the left atrium to do the catheter ablation. And after a couple of those, it's not uncommon for that hole to stay open. And it'll be mentioned that the patient has a foramen ovale. It may just be a small hole from where the catheter went through, or in some patients, it just didn't close at birth. So it can be from either situation. Joe, let's get back to your story. You've gone 10 years and you kind of lost several years of your life, it sounds like, where you just weren't really happy. Catheter ablation was suggested. You researched it, didn't like the numbers, then what?
So then I figured, well, let me read every article I can find. Let me try and find a natural remedy if it exists. So I went down that route, and I started. I knew I was going to be, on your podcast today. So I wrote down just some of the different herbs and minerals that I started taking, just in case there's someone out there saying like, oh, I'm just going to take some extra magnesium and that'll help. Now this is over, like a 9-year period. I was experimenting almost, going all these different natural path, and holistic practitioners. So I wasn't on all these at one time, but combinations of them. I was on zinc, CoQ10, Cataplex E2, Natural Calm Magnesium, Thyrotropin PMG, thyroid support, optimal EFAs, borage seed oil, B complex, vitamin D3, niacin, pantothenic acid, amino acid complex, cardiotrophin PMG, Cataplex B core, adrenal complex, high gamma mix, tocopherol, vitamin C, omega-3, kyolic, aged garlic extract, R-lipolic acid, milk thistle, turmeric, heart synergy, L-lysine, yarrow, melatonin, heavy metal detox, quercetin, ivermectin, chelated iron, cod liver oil, trace minerals, electrolyte powder, and prayer.
Well, the vitamin shop was happy to see your smiling face, weren't they? Boy.
I spent a small fortune.
You tried everything.
Go ahead, sorry.
You tried everything.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to communicate to your audience, that I tried everything that was out there. I also went to chiropractic adjustments, because one article I read said some people can actually be cured from the AFib by a certain adjustment in the neck. So I've been to the chiropractor countless times. I went to acupuncture. I went to biofeedback. Biofeedback had the best results of anything, but it didn't cure it. I went to something called neural emotional therapy. I did the Tesla coil, which is based on Royal Rife light frequencies they use. Grounding, anything that exists, I did. I'm probably even forgetting something, but because I've been on YouTube and everything, it was like 9 years had gone by and I still couldn't get better. But on year 9, a YouTube came up and said, "Hey, since you looked at these other ones about AFib, here's one from Dr. Randall Wolf." And I'm thinking to myself, Dr. Randall Wolf, I've listened to everybody. I've read everybody. It's like, who's this guy? And so I figure I got nothing to lose. Let's see who Dr. Randall Wolf is. And I watched a YouTube, and I'm not exaggerating in the least. I started weeping watching this YouTube, because I knew in my heart of hearts somebody out there somewhere had to have had a cure for this. If something goes wrong with the body, something had to cause it. And if it has a cause, it has to have a cure. And when I saw it, I'm thinking, this guy actually figured it out. I got on the phone. By the time that YouTube was finished, I got a phone consult. And even though I had been out of rhythm for 2.5 years, constantly out of rhythm, I was taking no drugs other than, the herbs, to support my, overall health. I was probably the last person you think that's going to have a positive outcome, being out of rhythm consistently for 2.5 years. But Dr. Wolf was even honest enough. He said, "Joe," he said, "even though you've been out that long," he said, "a lot of my patients, I'll give them maybe like a 95%, success rate, but I'm going to drop yours down to 85. I said, "Hey, I don't care if it's 75 or 65. I'm coming out there to see you." And that's how I ended up at Dr. Wolf's doorstep.
Well, Joe, I got another question for you from the audience. I'll interrupt you for a second. Was Joe in persistent or paroxysmal AFib? Well, the way I remember, initially you went in and out of rhythm for many years, but then like a lot of AFib, the last 2 years, it progressed to the heart was out of rhythm all the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, 2.5 years. Actually.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So if you're out of rhythm continuously for over a year, by definition, that's called long-standing persistent AFib. And if you're out of rhythm continuously for 2.5 years, you're getting into what we call chronic AFib or permanent AFib. Before that, you were in paroxysmal, and then you were at all the levels. I think you were in persistent for a while too, and you had how long in the journey were you when you had the cardioversion? Was that towards the end or?
No, that was that was probably after maybe a
couple years,
2 or 3 years.
Okay, so
yeah, that was kind of early on.
By definition, if a cardioversion has been performed, it's called persistent. So you went from paroxysmal to persistent to long-standing persistent to chronic. You kind of went through the whole gamut.
And I want your audience to know there may be someone out there listening saying, man, I'm like too far gone. But like, you know what? You may not be too far gone, and you may be able to get fixed with the mini-maze.
Well, that brings up another important point. What do I look at to make a decision to proceed or not, and what are the chances? Well, there are a couple things. One is, how big is the left atrium? Because if it's over 200 milliliters in volume, the chances of staying in rhythm start to decrease. Yours was under 200, Joe. I think it was around 150 or 60, as I recall. And that's not unusual for someone who's been out of rhythm for a few years. So I thought that was okay. Secondly, I have a rule of 5. If the heart's been out of rhythm continuously for over 5 years, the good results decrease. Well, I don't think you'd been out of rhythm for 5 years. It was 2.5.
No, right.
So that was in your favor. Lastly, we can also look at the EKG, and it'll show a little A wave. That's the atrial fibrillation wave. There's no P wave because the top chamber's not beating, but there's a little squiggly A wave. And we like to see that A wave more than one little block, which is 1 millimeter. So those are some of the things that I look at. Also, if you just have an echo, we like to see that the left atrium is less than 5.5 centimeters, and yours was on the echo. So it's less than 5.5, less than 5 years, and the left atrium less than 200 milliliters, which suggested to me that, okay, maybe it's not 95, but I felt pretty confident we could help you out. And the next thing that I probably mentioned to you is you should be on amiodarone before the procedure, which would increase the chances of staying in rhythm after the procedure. And one of the patients I did today from South Carolina was out of rhythm continuously, went on amiodarone. That got him back, and then he had a cardioversion. So for the last 3 months while he was waiting for the procedure, he was in rhythm. He's a lot younger than you. He's 34.
Yeah, I was skeptical at first when you mentioned the amiodarone, because some of the reading I had done said like, hey, this is pretty dangerous stuff in high doses. But I just put my faith in you. I followed your directions, and I got my life back. I'll put it that way.
Well, the key is low dose. The key is low dose amio, not high, because we're not trying to get you back in rhythm in a day or even a week. So avoid the high concentration, which increases the side effects dramatically. Go to the low dose and wait it out. We had a couple months to wait. It's okay. No problem. So you had your procedure 10 months ago. Oh, wait a minute. We got some questions too. Let me interject a couple questions here. This is for both of us, Joe. Speaking of natural remedies, can just improving your diet help? Well, my answer is yes, for 2 reasons. One is, if someone has sleep apnea and they lose weight, they usually have less severe sleep apnea, and there is a correlation between sleep apnea and AFib. Number 2, if at some point you want to get something done about your AFib, you're much better off if you're not severely overweight.
Yes, one of the like holistic people I went to, they thought I had some type of, it was being caused by some kind of mold. So they put me on or a fungus or something. They put me on like an antifungal diet for like 6 months. The first 3 months was like a super, super critical restricted diet. And then the next 3 months, they added a few little things. Well, I lost a lot of weight. I felt a little bit better, but it did nothing for the AFib. So I didn't even mention that before. Yeah, I've tried different diets. I've tried all. If it's out there and it exists, I probably tried it.
Okay. Here's one for you, Joe. I too have had to leave concerts because of a strong bass speaker messing with my heart.
Yeah.
I have had the Wolf procedure, but still have to be careful.
Yes.
There
I
you
agree,
go.
100%.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes. I know that there has to be other people out there. There has to be.
So maybe you should avoid Grand Funk Railroad, although I don't think they're around anymore. I don't know, maybe they are. They got to be about 80 years old now, though. What are some of the signs someone has it, and how serious is it? Well, I don't know if they're talking about the concert situation or just AFib. In general, about half the patients are like you. You know the second you're out of rhythm, something terribly is wrong. You know something, butterflies in your heart or something, you feel it. But there are half the people that don't feel it, but they do generally have this. They're more tired than usual. So I'll ask them, was there a time when it was harder to climb a flight of stairs if your bedroom's upstairs? Oh yeah, about 2 years ago I noticed I was really getting winded climbing upstairs. So some people's symptoms are not specifically related to a fluttering in the heart, but some other constitutional symptom like being more tired than usual or being more short of breath than usual. And I don't know if that answers the question, but maybe it does. Dr. Wolf, after the procedure and complete recovery, is it okay to drink alcohol again? Well, the short answer is yes, it is. I would do it in moderation, but yes, it is. I mean, the whole idea of having something done is so you can enjoy your life. And many people are almost obsessed with triggers. Well, if I drink cold water, I'm going to get it. If I have a drink of alcohol, I'm going to get it. Well, part of the whole idea of what we do here is to make it, excuse me, so you can enjoy a drink or a beer. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Joe?
I think everybody's body is different, and triggers, something that triggers something for you may not necessarily trigger for the guy sitting next to you. I think it's just kind of a trial and error. You know your body better than anybody. You know it even better than the doctor. So you figure it out and you do what's right for you.
Did you have any triggers?
No, none. Just that frequency that set it off, and it never stopped after that.
We pretty much say to people that you shouldn't worry about your triggers after you've had the procedure. But so alcohol is okay, but I mean in moderation, of course. So
and maybe you could reiterate that once the procedure is done, you're not on any kind of prescription drugs like whatsoever, and like that's like a home run.
Well, number one, you didn't have to take blood thinners anymore. Number two, you did get off antiarrhythmics. Mm-hmm. And were you on anything else?
No, just those three: the blood thinner, and the other two. That's it. But to me, like I've been, pretty healthy my whole life. So to go on any drug whatsoever, I went kicking and screaming. One of the books I read while investigating everything was written by Dr. Sherry Rogers. A lot of people know her from the Cholesterol Hoax, big thick volume. Anything you want to know about cholesterol is there. But she also wrote a book called "Is Your Cardiologist Trying to Kill You?" And one of the statements she made in the book is, she said, if you give a healthy person, prescription drugs, it will make them sick. So why in the world would we think that giving a sick person prescription drugs is going to make them healthy? Now, I'm glad when I go to the dentist, he's got, Novocaine, and I'm glad there's penicillin. I'm glad there are drugs in the world, but they're really just to be made primarily for like a short duration and for a specific period. But to be taking something year after year after year after year, you're going to poison some other part of your body at some point.
Yeah, it reminds me, I was going swimming last week, and I ran into an internist, and he asked me what I did, and I told him what I did, and he goes, "My job is to keep the patients away from you."
Well, I would like to interject this also in case there's someone that goes to their cardiologist next week and they mention, "Oh, did you ever hear of Dr. Wolf, etc." Since I have had the procedure, I've actually been in the hospital. I've been hospitalized 3 times. Don't think that it has something to do with what I had done at Houston Methodist. But the first time I had to go in, I needed an extra cardioversion because you told me your patients, if they can get to day 21 without atrial flutter, they're pretty much in the clear. On day 21, I got a flutter, and you said, "Joe, don't worry about it. Just make an appointment with your cardiologist. Let them do the cardioversion. You only need like 1 hit, and you'll be done." And so I went to my cardiologist. I said, "Hey, listen, my heart was racing." They actually hospitalized me because I was like at 140, 150 beats a minute. And so I told them all about Dr. Wolf, Houston Methodist, the Wolf mini maze. Nobody had any idea what I was talking about. One of the cardiologists all but accused me of not lying, but like she said, "No, that's just not possible." I told her about the atrial clamp you put in, and it'd be almost like impossible to get blood clots from that part of the heart. And they had to do a trans echocardium echogram, the TEE, before they would even consider doing cardioversion. Like they just didn't believe anything I told them because they had never heard of you. Mm-hmm. And so it took me 30 days to finally get in for the cardioversion. And for 30 days, my heart is racing at 140 to 150 beats a minute. But I called you. It was actually on July 4th. I was so thankful that they put me in touch with you. You said, "Joe, don't worry. It's not going to hurt anything. Relax." And if you said it, that's good enough for me. And so I went in. They hit me once, and I was good. And then maybe like a month later, I got a bad pneumonia. And I ended up in the hospital. And they looked at my charts and said, "Oh, we said, you have atrial fibrillation." I said, "No, I don't have that. I got it cured." They said, "What do you mean you have it cured?" So I had to go through the whole story with their cardiologists and their residents and med students that were there, the whole cadre of people that come in. Nobody ever heard of it, et cetera. So I had to go through it all again. And then a couple months later, I actually went to the hospital again because I had like chest pains. And I'm thinking, "Oh, no." And I've never had chest pains before. And after 5 days in the hospital, they said, "Oh, you have pericarditis." I said, "Okay." And so they gave me some medicine and they cleared that up. And so I had to go through this whole rigmarole of educating everybody about Randall Wolf, Houston Methodist, the Wolf mini maze. Nobody I met in the medical community has ever heard of you or this procedure. And it was absolutely mystifying. It would be like saying, "I have a cure for cancer," and you go to your oncologist and they say, "Oh, we didn't know there was one." Well, if you're a cardiologist, here's a cure. How can you not know of Dr. Wolf and the mini maze? I had to really control myself to stay calm that these people had no idea there's a cure.
So
it was absolutely mystifying.
Very frustrating for you, I can see. Maybe it's your job in life to bring the Wolf procedure into Pennsylvania.
Oh, I'm a Wolf evangelist. I already am. and I told you before we met, I've talked to so many people about it that some of them, especially when I was in the hospital, they would come in and say, "Oh, you're the guy that had that procedure done. My father has AFib, or my mother, or my cousin." It's like, could you give us what's that YouTube address, or what's the name of that hospital, or what's the name of that doctor? And I have literally lost count of the number of people that I have referred to you through YouTube or through Houston Methodist or whatever. I've literally lost count.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. It sounds like we need a satellite office in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'll be your biggest spokesman. And for the people listening to this podcast, it's like, look, I'm doing this strictly as a volunteer. We don't get paid. They don't coach us like, say this, don't say that.
Yeah.
This is completely spontaneous. And I don't have like really like electronic footprint. I don't do, Facebook or YouTube or this tube or that tube. I'm kind of invisible. I don't like technology. So just the fact that I'm here, that people can actually see me, that's like a huge step, because that's something I wouldn't do for anybody. But for Dr. Wolf, yes, I would, because he gave me my life back.
Well, thank you. That's we have a lot of grateful patients, and the best kind of patients a physician could ever have. Thank you for the testimonial. I think you went through everything very clearly, and it sounds like you found a brother who had the same problem at a concert. Here's another question. I guess this one's more for me. Can flutter be confused for something else, or is a definite sign? Well, from a clinical standpoint, a lot of times from the patient standpoint, it's difficult to tell if it's fib or flutter. Some patients can tell. They can say, this is different from my AFib. But a lot of times you can't. How about you, Joe? Could you tell the difference?
Oh, yeah. I never had flutter until that just one incident, 3 weeks after I had the
Could you tell it was different from AFib?
Oh, absolutely. My heart was like great. It was racing out of control.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that was quite different.
Okay. And then it's often confused in the emergency room. ER docs have to know a little bit about a lot of things. Oftentimes they're not that keen on reading EKGs. If they see an irregular rhythm, they call everything AFib. But in fact, it may be a flutter. On an EKG, a flutter tends to be more regular than AFib, but it's often missed in the ER. It can even be missed in the cardiologist's office. Sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference on the EKG. It's a little more common. It's more common after any procedure, catheter ablation or the Wolf procedure. It's more likely flutter than fib, as a matter of fact, if something recurs. I hope that answers the question. And for some people, it's more flutter is more incapacitating than fib. You agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of this. I think we've answered most of the questions. Love to hear a closing from you. I want to thank you again for coming on the program. I think it was extremely well informed, and I think you gave some good points to people out there that are suffering from AFib.
The only closing point I would give is, I can remember one of the last things I said to you when I left Houston, and I'm just going to repeat it because it hasn't changed. The Apostle Paul in the book of Philippians, he had a very, very special love for the Christians in the city of Philippi. And one of the things he said to them is, he said, I thank my God upon every remembrance of you. And I said that to you before, and I'll just say it again, Dr. Wolf. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you. And I pray for you that you'll be able to continue doing this work for as long as possible, because everybody gets different gifts and abilities in this life. And you've been given something very special, that you figured out how to cure this debilitating disease. And I can only thank God that he gifted you to do this. And I am a recipient, and so are thousands of other people, and many more in the future are going to be as well. And so I just wanted to thank you again.
Well, those are very humbling words. I appreciate it. I really do. There are other webcasts we've had about why what we do is different and why it works. We won't go into that now, but it's a completely different approach that obviously works. And I'll tell you what, Thank you so much for taking the time out for a person who doesn't use these type of services and being on air with us. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you.
Thank you.
Everybody,
God bless.
I think we'll be with you again in about a month, first Tuesday of the month. You can look for it on Facebook. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can go to Wolf Procedure website, or you can go to the Facebook site, which is Live AFib Free. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the evening. Mr. O'Brien, appreciate it. Take care.